colony of rats, which I've counted down to 20, is within about 25 yards. It's an absolute disgrace. And why are councillors going down there and looking around and seeing what they're doing? Because they're not. And they're not even here tonight. Not from these but people are paid to do that. They're not doing it. The council are just turning a blind eye to all the issues. And Mitcham's got a lot more to do than just betting shops, pulling boxes.
Alright, good evening everyone. Evening. My name is Councillor Aidan Mundy, and I'm the chair of the Mitcham Community Forum. Very pleased to be. I'm very happy to see my own ward on Untitled. So we've got Chris here, who many of you may already know is the brains of the operation, will keep us to time, and has done a great job putting us all together in terms of this event. So very grateful for him, but also grateful for you to come this evening, also some of our great organisations as well, who are here to support, and I'll go into that in a second. What we'll do is we'll kick off with obviously the open forum. I think we've got Nick from Mitcham Town Centre who will be speaking in that item. We'll give a council update from Councillor Billy Christie. We'll have another assembly update from Leonie Cooper, and then we'll have a climate action update from Amy from Merton Council. And then that will take us up to about 8 o'clock. And what we'll do then is I'll ask some of our great organisations who come to help. So Richard from Ways to Work, Suzanne from Citizens Advice, Naomi Homicide, Michael from the Merton Credit Union, and Martel, and his colleague from the Learning Consortium, to come up here and just briefly explain what they're here to offer and what they can do, because there's obviously the marketplace here, but also we have food. We have chicken curry, we have many other things as well, and tea and coffee, so by all means you can enjoy that time. And we will obviously have vouchers for those who want them as well. So please do stay for that at that time. So just a bit recap, we won't have any fires today. If there is any fire alarm, then the exit is just there. And as I said, plan to this part of the agenda will be finished around 8:15. So what I first want to do before moving on to the open forum is ask our councillors just to stand up, so they're so that many of you are aware of who they are, just in case. So can I start off with Billy?
Hi, Councillor Billy Christie.
Evening everyone, my name is Osama Kawasa and I represent Cricket Green. So if you want to talk to me about any matters concerning Cricket Green, I'll be over.
Brenda.
Good evening everyone, I do know some of you. I am Brenda Fraser and I'm the councillor, one of the councillors in Local.
Joan.
Hi, good evening everyone, my name is Joan Henry, I'm one of the councillors in Palazzolo, and also the mayor.
And I'm Martin Wilson, one of the councillors in Palazzo.
Thank you very much. So without further ado, can I ask Nick to speak at his open forum item, please?
Oh, okay. I'm here from Mitcham. I live in Mitcham Town Centre, and there's a few issues.
Oh, sorry, Nick, would you mind standing up?
Oh, sorry, yeah, sure. No problems. I live in Mitcham Town Centre, and there's a few problems in Mitcham Town Centre which I want to address. We've got somebody here from Cricket Green, but this is particularly in Mitcham Town Centre. The first major issue that I need to be addressed is an environmental health issue. We've got a colony of hamster-sized rats in the main car park of Mitcham Town Centre. I've counted at least 20 the other day. They are creating an infestation by the major car park, by the mosque. I can't understand why somebody from Environmental Health at Merton Council has not been down to look at the problem, had a look at it, because it's been there for some considerable time. I heard about it the other day and I went to have a look. It's an absolute disgrace. There are food shops around the area, there's supermarkets, and these giant rats are running around the car park. That car park, in theory, should be shut until the rats are dealt with and the rubbish is cleared. Not helped by fly tipping, of course. And that's a problem where we know that all around the area of Merton and other councils, there's a problem with fly tipping. What I can't understand is the fact that the council have just spent thousands of pounds in putting a a reservation down the centre of the road which runs past the area, which celebrates the cricket green, which celebrates the oldest cricket green in the world. Spent a lot of money on that, and it's, excuse the pun, it's a quick single away from where all these rats are running around the car park, where the bus drivers actually they've got a quarter cabin there, and the bus drivers have their breaks there where they change drivers. We desperately need somebody from environmental health to go down there to sort out all the scrubland, to make it clear, and to get rid of the rats, because it's in the middle of town centre. My concern is that has it been allowed to happen? Basically, if it was Wimbledon, it would have been sorted out, in my humble respect, would have been sorted out very quickly. But because it's Mitcham, then for some reason it gets left. So that's an issue, and I'd like that logged and dealt with as quickly as possible, because it's a major environmental health problem. And as I say, so that's the first thing. We've also got an issue with local street drinkers in Mitcham Town Centre. And I've been in Mitcham for some time, but since I've been gone part-time to work, I've managed to spend a lot of time in Mitcham Town Centre. And all I've been told is, oh, it's been a problem for years. It's been a problem for years. I've actually got to know most of the street drinkers in Mitcham Town Centre. I work in probation, so I know a little bit about background of helping people, etc. And there's a lot of people there that feel abandoned. They're not getting any help. Some obviously don't want any help. But we do need some strategy, either from the council or from Evolve, the homeless people, the Salvation Army who are here tonight. I've been around Mitcham Town Centre with the pastors who go around every Friday, once a month. There's a limit to what they can do. But we really do need to try and give them some help to start with. And they've just been abandoned. And they've actually told me that they feel abandoned. And on top of that, they drink too much. I've watched them fall asleep after finishing off a bottle of red wine at 9:30 in the morning. Now, I don't think anybody who lives in Mitcham really is prepared to accept that, because it's not right. And it's a problem that should be dealt with. And it can be solved. But it needs all the agencies to try and help. And, so that's another issue. They also create a lot of rubbish, and they're not as bad as they were, because they see me coming sometimes and they put it all in the bin. But that also attracts the rats.
How would you try to solve it? What's your opinions on that? How would you try to solve it?
Well, we need to get all the agencies involved.
No, it needs to come at street level, people like who are like-minded. It can't come from outside.
Well, it has to.
No.
To a certain extent.
Listen, you've got to do it together on that level. You can't go outside, because a lot, about being rude, a lot of people just out of touch with that sort of thing.
No, but
Let's have it right. But come on, they're not living in the area every day, walking down the street, going down the shops.
No,
Not amongst it. You've got to get people who are amongst it and do it that way. You can't go out the area.
No,
I'm talking about Salvation Army because they actually see the person,
Yeah.
not the issue.
Yeah.
There's a difference between that.
Yeah.
So you need people to come down and say, look, what's going on here? I mean, I'm talking about clubs, where's the funding coming from, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You can put a tent up and have people meeting there, or even a market.
Yeah,
See,
absolutely.
I think
That's
that's
something.
I think it's
yeah.
a great, that's a really
It's a
great
great idea.
idea. A really good point. I think you've got one final point before you move on to the next items on it.
Sorry, I was just...
No, it's really.
Listen, I've got to say something.
No,
I'm surrounded.
Well, that's what he is. Here is for. So,
I think
I'm going to say some
it was very interesting, because I went to the meeting about the gasworks the other day, this massive, great big project for the gasworks, and the developers said to us, we're going to revitalise Mitcham Town Centre. And I got up and I said, how? How are you going to do that? You can't even get a trolley in Morrison's, because they all get nicked and taken up to the estates. How are you going to revitalise? Mitcham Town Centre, I think quite a long time ago, had a town centre manager. It needs one back again to coordinate the shops and to try and improve part of the town centre. We don't need all the betting shops. We don't need the shops that sell the beer and etc. etc. It does need to be improved, and it needs a joint effort from the council. It needs a joint effort from people like Evolve. all right, to a certain extent, people like myself who are doing the best I can. I mean, for just another quick example, I don't know if I'm going off and on, lots of other people need to say things. We had an issue with pigeons in Mitcham Town Centre, infestation of pigeons. I counted up by farm food 8-9 months ago, 30 pigeons, all roosting on the top of farm food, which is a food store. All their droppings were going on the floor. Nobody did anything. Same with peacocks, same with Morrisons. I'm not blowing any trumpets myself, but I had to solve the problem by phoning up the head office and saying, you've got a big problem with pigeons, get it sorted. Within 3 weeks, they put the spikes up. But no manager in the shop had done anything. And the staff were telling me that they were slipping on the droppings of the pigeons when they came into work when it was wet. I mean, ridiculous. It's a town centre. It needs to attract people in. It's not. So there's all various issues there which I would like to address. I would like to put in the minutes. I think they could be solved, and there are certain ways of getting
Don't
it
they
solved.
usually run the area down and pick the land up for cheap? They say it normally works and everything. So when they say we're going to redevelop the place, they mean run it down to the ground and then,
Yeah.
oh look, no one lives here, it's cheap, that's
I
30 days,
Yeah.
and then sell the land off after for
I
a
think
fortune.
in that particular example of the developer, I think that was the land itself as a former gas work, so
Yes.
it can't, to be quite frank, it's served its purpose there. But
Right.
I understand your wider concerns about that. But Nick, can I just quickly summarise what you mentioned? So you talked about the concern of rats in the main car park. We talked about fly tipping to local street drinkers and what can be done about them. And then obviously you gave the example of pigeon spikes, but overall, on a strategic level, you've got concerns about return of a town centre manager, some sort of more of that type of feel.
I know. In Wimbledon, a lot of the main stores, and not a lot of the drinking places, they've all got together in a kind of a forum. And I've spoken to, I think, to all the managers of all the shops in Mitcham Town Centre. They all work completely independently of each other. They should be having meetings every 3 months, every 6 months, in a collective forum.
Why don't you go around the shops? You actually go the head of it. Why don't you do that? See, no, not on it. You can,
But,
no point, no.
if the council will pay me, I will.
It's in your just do it for free, just for the sake of it.
But then, if they meet, they can discuss how can we improve things.
I think that's a valid idea. Let me take that back and
Yeah.
capture that. And let's give you an update for next meeting.
And of course, I know for a fact that, going back to the street drinkers, I know that some of the off licences which sell the high alcohol content beer are giving it away on tick.
Okay.
And they shouldn't.
No, it shouldn't.
Because it just encourages.
You've got to bear in mind, these people are drinking to forget how sad that is, but they drink to forget, and they just do that, and that's how far they've gone.
Oh, I
And
understand.
so we've given up, it's not given up, it's just like, some people need someone to lean on, not everyone's like big and powerful. That's the truth of it. I lived in the ages for a few years, and it's nowhere near enough up there to
No, I understand.
So,
But that's just a general thing. Thanks for giving our time.
No, at the end of the day, it actually builds it.
So thank you, encourages it for contributing today. It's really, really insightful. Okay, is there anything further? And we've got Councillor Christie to give an update from the council. Cool. Billy, can you try and be please for the camera?
Thank you, Aidan, and thank you everybody for coming tonight and taking part in this meeting. I'm here, my name is Councillor Billy Christie. I'm as of May, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services in the Council in the new administration since the local elections. I'm here tonight on behalf of the new leader of the Council, Councillor Ross Garrett, who sends his apologies. Sorry he couldn't be here himself, but I know he's committed to come to a future meeting, so we'll get to meet him at one of his meetings eventually.
not acceptable, is it really? Someone's just been a cameo. You should be, he should be there. Not really acceptable, is it?
Well, it's
No, not really. I mean, there's other things I could have done, but I thought I'd come.
Not everyone's available every night, but I'm sure it'll be at a future meeting. Don't worry. But he's asked me to share an update on some of the things that the new administration has been prioritising, working on, and we actually, the number one priority of the new administration, as the leader has put it, is reinstalling civic pride into the borough of Merton And I think that touches on some of the things that Nick, you talked about in your points just now, about the need to collaboratively, residents, councillors, organisations, everyone that lives here and works here needs to be prepared to take a stake in the borough, reinstall that pride, and do what we can to make Merton a place that we're all proud to live in and work in. So that is, as I say, and as Ross has said, that's the number one priority of the new administration. To achieve this, Ross has said that we're committed to investing in people, our residents, our places, our high streets, our town centres, and our services, the council services that we provide and you all pay for through your council taxes. To achieve this, we've got sort of three underlying priorities. The first, as I've mentioned, is to nurture civic pride in the borough. The second is to build a sustainable future for the borough. And the third is to capitalise on our fantastic sporting legacy and make Merton the borough of sport in London. So what do those mean? Civic pride, the first one. Nick, as I said, you've touched on a lot of the things that we want to address under this priority. But if I can just name a few other things that we want to focus on. We want people to feel proud to live and to work in Merton. But more than this, we want residents to take a stake in the community. We want to make it easier for people to volunteer in the borough, linking neighbours up to projects and organisations in their area, and rewarding communities for great local action when they take it. We've got so much to be proud of in the borough, and we want people to really love where they live and where they work. And this will include looking at how we support our high streets and our town centres, but it also means taking the difficult decisions to make sure we're keeping our streets clean, and our borough clean. And for those of you who sort of, if you keep up with council, communications on social media or on Twitter, you might be aware that we're at cabinet level expecting to take a decision next week around the street cleaning contract that we currently have.
I've been out myself.
Can you pose your questions to one Billy?
Just one second, sorry. I've been out on the street the last 2 weeks and I filled up 4 bin bags of rubbish. It was round the close and on the back greens. Now, bin collections are being missed. God knows why. All luzzed on the floor. Foxes are coming all round the cup. I can't live like that.
Billy, can I pick up? So,
That's not right.
I mean, you
carry on.
No, I was going to say, as your ward councillor, let's pick that up afterwards, because I go around the estate and see the reporter. But let's work on that.
Yeah, but I think so. I'll just try and get through the update that I've got from the leader. But I think your point,
I look out the window and I can't live like this.
Your point is exactly right, sir.
And I've got people coming down saying, Lord's going to praise me, you're rewarded. And I'm thinking, well, if you're religious, why don't
if you give me a minute to answer your point, sir, we recognise that the street cleaning in the borough hasn't been good enough. And as I said, next week, Cabinet will be taking a decision about what we do to fix that. So I can't preempt.
You're in a foxhole as well.
I don't think we're going to be introducing fox hunting in the borough, but you'll hear more about what we'll be doing to make the streets cleaner. So that's civic pride. The second one I mentioned, and that Ross has identified as a priority, is building a sustainable borough. So this means encouraging residents to use sustainable transport. We want to make Merton the easiest place in London to hire or own an electric car or rent a bike, and make it easier for residents to walk around our borough. It's not sustainable for people to continue using cars for short journeys. We've got to address that and provide the practical solutions that people need to start changing those underlying behaviours. We need to tackle the climate emergency, working together, and I imagine Leonie, our London Assembly member, might update on some of the London-wide work that's going on as we seek to address the climate emergency. And we, on top of that, want to be a champion for providing genuinely affordable homes in the borough. So, you know, we want that across the borough, but for the council to do its part, we've committed to a target of achieving 400 new, genuinely affordable homes to be built on council-owned land by 2026, by the time of the next council elections. So that's our target, that's what we've committed to.
What was the
How many
funding
was there last year, last administration?
Can we hold questions to the end and we'll take them round to three? And Billy can get through his point.
Sure. But, you know, just to kind of preempt that question, the council hasn't been building homes on council-owned land. That's not something that's been going on. That's a new target of this new administration. So that's something that we've put in place to ensure that we start addressing that. We also want to see, and Councillor Mundy's is the chair of our planning committee, so he'll be fundamental to this. We want to see a shift in the emphasis of our planning work so that we get good quality, energy efficient developments right across the borough. The borough of sport, the third priority. This is about capitalising, as I said, on our fantastic sporting heritage to be recognised across London as the borough of sport. We want to work with our fantastic local clubs and facilities to offer additional opportunities to drive investment into grassroots sport and to promote healthier lifestyles for everyone who lives here. So those are the priorities. I also just want to set out briefly what we've done to act on those in the first few months of this administration. On street cleanliness, as I said, we recognise that it's not been good enough. Straight away after the election, the leader and a cabinet member, Councillor Irons, met with the chief executive or the managing director of Veolia and set up an action plan to immediately start doing what we can to address the state of the streets. So that includes establishing a nighttime response team who are dedicated to going into our town centres and cleaning up during the night time, because obviously we recognise that, you know, it's not sustainable to have crews cleaning up in the day and then mess created in the night time, and then that stays there overnight and gets worse. So we've created that response team with Veolia. We've recruited 10 additional enforcement officers who join the existing team of enforcement officers on the streets in town centres and busy sort of spots in the borough, like tube stations, train stations. And their job is to essentially prevent, and if they witness it, fine anybody who's caught littering in the borough, so messing up the borough. Their job is to fine them. We've recruited 10 additional enforcement officers. And we've also provided an emergency response vehicle to respond to fly tipping quicker. The leader and the cabinet member are keeping this action plan under review and are making sure that we keep pressure on Veolia, the contractor, to perform as they're supposed to. But it's not as simple as the council just doing that. We need your help, we need everyone's help. We need everyone to take a stake in keeping our borough clean. And that's why we've partnered with an app called Fix My Streets. Some of you may have come across it, some of you may have already downloaded it. If you haven't, I urge you to. It's free and it's very easy to use. And what you can do is on that app, you can easily report fly tipping, but you can report many other things as well at the exact location where you've seen it. And then the council's commitment, particularly for fly tipping, is to get to it and clear it up within 24 hours of it being reported. So using that app is a much more efficient and easy way for people to report something, that information to go to the council, for us to monitor it, send a crew out to collect it, and then check that it's been done. And you then get a follow-up email to say when it's been cleared, so that you will
Would
know
it be
as
cheaper
well.
just to go around knocking on people's doors when you live, go, if you see someone do it?
I think that
Where's
app
all the
is
money
free, so
coming
that's,
from? No, what I'm saying is,
that's
it's all you,
fair.
and the guys come out.
The point is,
It's all the
we need
council.
everyone's help to keep the borough clean. The council is doing what it can, we need everyone's help as well. And as I said, it's not just fly tipping you can report, it's if you see graffiti anywhere, it's if a street light near you isn't working, if you find an abandoned vehicle on your road, If there's a problem at a bus stop, like the light at the bus stop isn't working or the screen isn't working, you can report all that on this app and it will all get picked up and addressed. So I urge you to use that. And as I said, we'll be taking a decision next week about whether to continue or to extend the contract that we have with Veolia. I can't obviously preempt the decision Cabinet will take, but you know, I'll share with you that I expect that the decision will be that we won't continue with Veolia and we'll look to how we can provide a different or new service that meets the needs of everyone who lives here, because we recognise the service that's been provided so far has not been good enough. There's a second app I want to plug for you all. If you haven't already downloaded the Merton Local app, it's a fantastic app developed by the council, and what the purpose of it is it's for local businesses that are local to Merton, to our high streets, town centres. They advertise their services, their shops, their events on there, and it's highlighted then for everyone who's downloaded the app, because we all say we want to support our town centres and our high streets, but in reality, do we know what's on offer in the borough? This app helps get the word out about what is available so that we can all shop local, buy local. So I encourage you to use Merton Local app if you haven't got it. It's already been downloaded by 4,000 people in the borough, and there's more than 300 businesses and organisations that are advertising their services on there. I've got a couple more things I want to run through quite quickly. I've talked about the target that we've got to deliver 400 homes on council-owned land by the end of by the council elections in 2026. We've already unlocked funding the first 93 of those. So since the election, we've already achieved that, and we'll be working to continue to unlock the funding for the remaining number. 250 new electric vehicle charging points are going to be coming into the borough. That's as a result of a successful bid for funds that the council made from the Office for Electric Vehicles, or zero emission vehicle. And on top of that, we've added an additional, since the election, we've added an additional £2 million into the council's climate emergency fund. So that's money, additional money that we've set aside to use to tackle climate emergency and help us reach our net zero target. The council, by the way, the council as an organisation has committed to achieving net zero by 2030. The rest of the borough, in line with the government's target that the rest of the country is aiming to achieve, is for net zero by 2050. So the council is setting a more ambitious target than the government to tackle the climate emergency we're all facing. And on sport, in July, we approved the investment of £1 million into local sports facilities to boost local participation. This includes tennis courts, athletics tracks, sports fields, they're all on the list. And in fact, on tennis, 40 of the council's 69 tennis courts are now in a programme of refurbishment that's kicking off this year. So we're going to be resurfacing and refurbishing 40 of our almost 70 tennis courts. And finally, just one final area for me to touch on, as well as all of those administration priorities that are going to be there throughout the length of the administration, we've also taken action to tackle the big issue that we're all facing, the cost of living crisis. And this is obviously a national crisis. Everyone in the country is dealing with it, but we in Merton are doing what we can to help people here. So within a month after the election, we created a new £2 million emergency fund that we're using to help local people who have been hit the hardest by inflation and rising bills. We've already, as a council, got one of the most generous council tax support schemes on offer in the country, but we're going further. We've hosted 4 cost of living events across the borough already, and I'm delighted that we're hosting another this evening. Thank you to every organisation that's participated in that. And you know, we have many residents attend the previous events, and we're able to get a lot of advice and support in tackling the increasing bills. We're continuing to provide free school meal vouchers to children throughout school holidays. You may remember Marcus Rashford's campaign from a couple of years ago during the height of the pandemic. We've continued that. We're providing the funding for children to continue having nutritious meals during school holidays.
Oh no, I shouldn't butt in. You know your school meal. How can you expect a child to get a meal for £2.13? Because that is what they charge to give the kids for their dinner.
I think it's £2, gone up to £2.90, but it's still not enough.
Yeah, I think it's a voucher that goes towards being able to pay for nutritious food for children that wouldn't otherwise be there. So, you know, I think it's obviously down to parents to spend the money as best they can for their children. But, you know, I think in the scheme of things, a lot of parents who benefited from the voucher scheme have told us that they wouldn't have been able to provide food for their kids if it wasn't for that. So, you know, I think it has made a major difference. So all of that is by way of saying, since the elections in May, the new administration has set out a number of key priorities, but the headline one, number one priority for the administration, for the leader, is to reinvigorate pride in our borough, and I've set out a number of ways that we're aiming to achieve that. So sorry for taking so much time. Happy to either take any questions, or if I can't field them, happy to take them back to the leader and come back to you with an answer.
Right.
Thank you. So we're taking round to three, and then, so one there, and then, so did you want to ask a question as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so two, and then a third hand up. Anyone else? Third, right. One right.
First of all, what is affordable housing? And the second point is fly tipping. Starting with fly tipping, Croydon have a system where when they prosecute somebody, they get a picture and they think it in paper. We don't need to do that. Now, affordable housing, what is it?
So affordable housing and prosecute organised fly tippers. Next question.
Just to sort of carry on what he said now, the fly tipping wasn't an issue back in the day. They used to have rag and bone come around. It's now, I know people who still do it, not fly tip, they take rubbish. It's 180 quid a tonne to put rubbish in there. That's the problem, really. Too greedy.
So we've got one question.
But now, just to sort of carry on that as well, but what he said about the dinners, now I watched the thing with Jamie Oliver, right? He goes around, he's great, he's brilliant. And he goes to farmers. And the farmers, what they give out the fruit, if it's not a certain shape or size, it gets thrown away. That's thrown away. So why not tap into that, into farmers? You can put that into school. Costs you nothing.
So we've got the market, we've got the market economics of waste, and also I think they call it, is it funny shaped edge?
Yeah, you know, like supermarkets go there, go, it's not suitable for our packaging, so it gets discarded and thrown away. Jamie Oliver said why? So you can go to farmers, which will help the local people as well, and you know, grassroots local, if you want to call them that. And there you go, and it's going to be cheap, isn't it? Because otherwise it's going to get thrown away. Save a fortune. Kids can eat decent meals.
Funding for 93 homes, you announced that you were going to fork out money to actually upgrade the plans to make them suitable. You didn't announce the value of them, which you just, I think I heard you say you've got the money to do that, to actually build them, which is different to the 300,000, I think, off the top of my head. So just on top of the 2.1 million we've already spent on the plans, so we're now on 2.4 million. What's the actual value of the building the homes, which obviously I think is the expensive bit, which is why you agreed it was unviable a few years ago.
So questions on affordable housing, building in Merton, really important. Share planning, very, very important to me. Fly tipping, and obviously
I've got loads more.
You've got loads more. And
multi-veg. Sure. So starting with you first, sir. On what are affordable homes, essentially there's a national definition of what counts as an affordable home.
I already know. Can you tell me?
Yeah, so the for affordable rent, that essentially is classified as 80% of market rent. So that's what the government classify as an affordable home or affordable rented home. That is an affordable rented home. That is obviously separate to what I and many other people, many organisations consider to be genuinely affordable homes. And so when I say we're committing to building genuinely affordable homes, what that generally means is social rent, which is much lower than the 80% affordable rent that is given. I don't have off the top of my head the figure for the level of social rent, but that's what we're aiming for. It's much lower than the affordable 80% market rent that the government sort of officially uses. Maybe other councillors with more specialist knowledge about housing can jump in if they have knowledge about social rent, but it's essentially what we're considering genuinely affordable as opposed to the government's affordable.
They'll always be 8% lower than the market price of the other.
Not 80% lower, 80% off. So if market rent is 100%, they're saying affordable is 80% of that. So 20% off.
Yeah.
And on prosecuting fly tipping, you're right that we need to do more. Merton in the last 8 months or so launched what it's calling the Wall of Shame, where we are publishing CCTV footage that we've got, where we've got it, of people that are sort of caught red-handed fly tipping. We're publishing that, publishing the YouTube videos. We're asking for everyone's help in identifying who it is that's doing this, so that we can then prosecute them.
Can't you just go to the tips or the yards and say, that, listen, can you lower the costs of people? 'Cause I know people up on the estate, they actually do it for a living. They can't, £180 a tonne. Can't you actually go to the tip and say, can you lower it, please? We'll come here 4 or 5 times a week, lower it to 70 quid, and they're like, oh, happy days, I can earn a living instead of trying to scratch about.
Yeah,
It's top heavy, mate. Simple as that. Working class, and that's the old chestnut.
Can I come in with these people?
And it's true.
I mean, that's a good point, and it's probably more detailed into than Billy would even admit his knowledge of the market economics of waste. But ultimately, they need to pay their bills, so someone needs to subsidise their profit share or whatever their
It's
fundamental.
gone through the roof, it doesn't make sense, and it causes problems for everybody else.
I completely understand.
I know these boys, people saying he ain't got a shirt and he's a scumbag. He ain't like that. Bloke up there, he's got 2 kids, nicest bloke you met in your life. 180 quid, he can't afford it.
But
That's fine.
I think this shows the complexity, but he continue talking of this problem in terms of waste management and everything else.
Yeah. So I think there is a sort of separate issue of commercial fly tipping and how we tackle that versus sort of more everyday fly tipping. You know, someone leaving a mattress on the street or
What I'm saying is you provide all this money for
I
CCTV
think,
and stuff.
sorry to
It's a
interrupt.
fortune.
Sorry to interrupt.
What's the point?
I think people,
Redirect it.
I do think people want to hear the answers. So if you let me finish the answers, and then we can come back and have another question. That's all right. Let me go through it. So we are trying to, we have committed to prosecuting everyone where we've got evidence that they commit fly tipping. We've asked for residents' help in identifying culprits by publishing these videos with the Wall of Shame. So if you have the opportunity to have a look, if you spot anyone, if you recognise anyone, tell us, we'll take them to court, because it's not good enough and it is a crime. I think the points you make about providing nutritious
Sam, there
food
isn't
for
just a
children.
Lincoln way we're going to find them and put CCTV out and get people to grasp them up. Go to the tips and say, can you lower it? You haven't got to spend thousands and thousands on CCTV for a start, and direct the funds in the right direction. It's understanding. It's us. No, you're getting this. That's how it comes across to people. You don't understand that. It does. It's to get amongst them and talk to these people. Go with them and say, listen, there we go. Instead of CCTV, all this, it goes on and on and on, escalates, and then what you got?
Yeah, I
People
understand.
don't like being told what to
understand.
do or pointed at. They've got enough. It's as simple as that. Have a look around the world. Enough.
I think it's
Simple.
Let's let Billy complete. And
Oh, I can't.
otherwise, no, fair
Put the
points.
soapbox away.
No, it's fair points, but you've made some really great questions, but Billy can't answer them unless you let him answer them.
Well, it's not on the head, you know. I'm talking about the whole, I'm representing the whole estate here, sorry, Brian.
I appreciate that. So I do understand your points.
Yeah.
I think, though, we do have to you know, and this isn't my portfolio, so I'm no expert on this, but we do have to see what we can do to support people in the commercial waste sector about how they can continue to operate a sustainable business. But at the end of the day, fly tipping, dumping waste on other land is a crime, and that needs to be
I'll just
tackled.
explain why, because I know people who do it and can't afford it. And that
Yes,
sounds
there's
ridiculous.
always
and I
reasons why
agree.
people commit
And
crimes.
he look- no, but he
At the
look-
end of the day,
Yeah,
it's a
but
crime,
oh,
isn't
forget
it?
the
We do
crime
have to
thing. He's
tackle
looking
it.
at his two little kids here, they're young kids, right? Let's get on a sensible level. Forget all this crime crap. He's looking at two kids here, and he needs to feed them. And he's thinking, shit, I've got the money. This is my job. Go round. In the end,
I appreciate that, and we've got to
that's
support.
what it really is. It's not about crimes and all this, do this and do
Anyway,
that.
if I can move on to the
Housing.
third question around housing. You're right, we announced the intention to spend some money to bring the plans for the 93 homes on the first 4 council-owned sites that we got planning permission for. We've announced that we've spent £300,000 to bring those plans up to the necessary standard to go ahead with building. In terms of securing the funding for actually building them, we have, I don't want to announce the amount yet because I'm not sure that's been made publicly available, but we have secured funding through the GLA to get started on building these homes. So I'm not in a position to
Get
announce,
started or will build them.
well, build them.
You've got the full balance sitting there.
Well, we've secured it. I can't tell you that. If it's in a bank account, though, it's secured.
I think that's
funding,
a
so-
technical question that's unfair to put into our
No, it's just how, a year ago it was unviable and it was clear it was unviable.
It was
and now it's
unviable.
not. And,
It
it's
was
just,
unviable for
and they were not even affordable homes at the time. Only one of the 4 sites was
exactly.
affordable.
So they're not.
So
being
now
built.
they're all affordable.
They're not
So now
being-
it should be more expensive, not less expensive than it was last time. Because you're going to make profits last time. Whereas now you're not going to make any profit.
It depends on economics of them. Again, I appreciate, I haven't seen the economics of it, so let's wait until we see that and then come to the
No,
next
it's just that
one.
it was announced just then that you have the funds, but I don't think we do.
Okay. Well.
Well, let's see that. I think Mike, you put your hand up. So Mike,
Sir.
just want to vote you.
Yeah, I think good evening. But no, I just think this gentleman. I think the point was.
That's cool, man.
I think the point was really rather than looking at the fact that what it was addressing is a crime, it's looking at the causes of the crime and addressing the cause.
Yeah.
Because the solutions generally follow the same pattern and they don't really solve the problem. They eventually make it worse because it all relates to money ultimately. So I think we can look at the reasons why people are kind of doing it.
I agree with you.
I think that's the approach that we're taking or we've taken needs to be changed.
I do understand and I do agree with what you're saying, and we do need to see what we can do and do more of it to support people who are, trying to earn an honest living. But the question was about prosecuting people that fly tip, and I think it's got to be.
It's a cause and effect, isn't it? That's what
it's a cause and effect, but it's also a carrot and stick. That you want to prevent people from breaking the law. If they do break the law, there has to be consequences. So I think it's a.
But then again, I'll just go on the tangent a little bit. If you look all over the world before the lockdown, everybody all over the world was going, we've got enough of you governments, and that's true, all over the world. And then now all of a sudden it's, oh, little COVID's coming, lock you down, cost of living, and we're all trod down again. So, do you know what I mean? Same sort of
That's an
thing.
interesting interpretation. I'm not sure I go over that view.
Well,
as well,
anyway,
but fair enough.
it's just perception.
I don't know if anyone else has any other questions or.
I think there was the other question was about the wonky fruit veg.
Yeah.
There is a scheme for that. Sustainable Merton's run a scheme called the Community Fridge.
Oh, brilliant! That's
So
good.
there's some of
They
that.
actually do some here as well, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Free food, brilliant. It's brilliant. That's a good thing. You've got to look at things. Come down. I'm not saying I'm telling you, John. You do your job.
Yeah, absolutely. Look,
I've taken up all your time.
It's all good. Can we thank Billy in the usual way? Because I really, really appreciate it.
Do come up to me afterwards if there's anything else. Happy to continue.
You've heard that.
Are you sure?
Alright, so we're all nine usual customers. Alright, tomorrow I need to come up and speak. The only's our assembly member, so she'll give the views on what's happening across London.
I will. And I'm going to say now, if you've got thoughts, some of you have quite a lot of thoughts, can you wait till the end?
Please.
No.
Yes. No, because otherwise I'm going to get really, it's a bit complicated. There's so many different things, and it would be really helpful if you don't mind doing that. Just for those of you who may not be familiar with the ins and outs of the London Assembly, 25 London Assembly members are elected at the same time as the Mayor of London. I was elected in 2016 and I was re-elected in 2021, and I'm obviously one of those 25. I represent, and most of the constituencies range from 2 boroughs, so I represent Merton and Wandsworth. Some of them represent 3 boroughs. London North East is Waltham Forest, Hackney and Islington. So they're quite large constituencies. So I do try and get round to most of the community forums in Merton on a sort of rolling basis, just to sort of keep people updated. Because obviously a lot of the services that we've just been discussing, that Billy's just been talking about, are things that are run from the council. Then there are the things that where the government makes the decisions, and either City Hall or the council has to implement it and work within the boundaries that the government sets. And then there are some things that actually can be decided at a City Hall level, and there are various budgets that the Mayor holds. So Billy was just talking about the 4 sites and housing, and one of the things that just before May and just afterwards, I was talking to the Deputy Mayor, Tom Copley, and saying it's really important that we make sure that we can do some investment into Merton. So the money, your question, the money's not quite arrived yet, but Tom Copley has been down and has visited the sites with the leader of the council and the cabinet member for housing, and so it's in progress now. Exactly where it is in progress, I think it's a bit difficult to ask Billy to go into all the details of that, because he's neither the leader nor the cabinet member for housing. But I think that's really positive, and that's the kind of thing that I can do at City Hall, is talk to the Deputy Mayor for Housing, but also the Deputy Mayor for Planning, who's called Jules Pipe, and so I've taken the opportunity to talk about the gasworks site with Jules and some of the planning officers there, because particularly big planning schemes are not just dealt with by Aidan and colleagues on the planning committee here, but if it's taller than a certain height, or if it's got more than a certain number of flats or houses on that site, it also goes to City Hall for the planners there to have a look at, and they get the opportunity to do a stage 1 review and decision, and then a stage 2 review and decision. So that's mainly on big sites. If it's a really small site, that doesn't come into the picture. And so we're there to be the voice of Londoners, particularly the people in our constituencies, and to hold the Mayor to account. So we have a series of committees, very similar to the council committees, where we sort of delve into the details of particular areas. I sit on the Environment Committee. I've been the chair and the deputy chair at various points over the last 6.5 years. I'm currently the deputy chair again. I'll be the chair from next May. And I'm also on the Housing Committee, and I'm also on the Fire Resilience and Emergency Planning Committee, but we also have meetings where the Mayor is in front of us, like Prime Minister's Questions, which is once a week for half an hour. We have the Mayor once a month for 3 hours. So he doesn't have to do it every week, but it is for a very long period of time. And I must say that during Ramadan, I do feel really sorry for him, because he does 3 hours, and obviously he's not drinking or eating during that period of time, and it can be quite, you know, it's quite wearing actually, I think, at any time, even with a nice cup of tea. So some of the big services that the Mayor runs, apart from having this role in the planning system, are things like the Metropolitan Police, the Fire Brigade and Transport for London. Now, of course, those have not been in the news at all. There's nothing on the front page of today's paper about the Metropolitan Police. You know, the police are in the spotlight at the moment pretty much all the time. I've seen pictures on social media that were sent to me of the car that Chris Cubber was driving, which actually, although it was in Lambeth, was not far from where I live, so I'm just over the border from Merton and Lambeth. I live right down in the southeast of Wandsworth. And, you know, when they're not doing that, they appear to spend all their time sending each other hideous WhatsApp messages. It's almost unbelievable. I mean, at the moment, I don't really know what to say about the Metropolitan Police. I do know some fantastic officers but obviously, you know, their good name is being tainted by all of these revelations that keep coming out, and it's just not good enough. Now, obviously, we parted company with Cressida Dick. You can ask me about that if you want. I wasn't in the room. I didn't hear what the mayor said to Cressida Dick. Only they will ever really know what got said. But you know, we've now got a new Metropolitan Police Commissioner, and Mark Rowley, and he will come in front of the Police and Crime Committee, and so Assembly members will have the opportunity not just to say and another thing to the mayor, but we in our committees we do get the opportunity to say and another thing to the senior officers from the Metropolitan Police, and believe me, there's been a lot of that being said at the moment. Dame Louise Casey, who actually started life working in social housing, is doing a deep dive at the moment into the culture of the Metropolitan Police. She doesn't normally take prisoners when she does these investigations, so I think the report that she comes out with should be quite interesting, along with the ones that have come out from His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, HMIC, and they've also just done one from His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary for the Fire Brigade, which has come up with some very similar stuff about the culture in the fire brigade that also needs to be tackled as well. So, and there is also the issue of funding for these big services as well, and so sometimes also, you know, we're looking at high levels of stress and a lot of police officers who might be off sick, and the same with the fire brigade. You know, it's very, very difficult because we are expecting more and more of officers, when they, you know, counter-terror, cybercrime, guarding Buckingham Palace, guarding Parliament, you know, the list goes on and on and on. And some of those things we expect them to do in the Metropolitan Police, we don't actually get any, or very little funding from the government to do it. They don't give us enough money for being because we are the national and international capital city. Their own assessment from the Home Office says we should get £192 million more than they actually give to the Metropolitan Police. So, you know, obviously that leaves a bit of a hole in the finances, and then they do all the other, you know, the everyday stuff, the safe neighbourhood teams, policing football matches, you know, they're doing it. And because of the underfunding of the health service, and because of the underfunding of local authorities actually as well, the police quite often get dragged into doing some other things, like trying to deal with someone who's, you know, perhaps having a sort of a bit of a moment on the side of the road, and there aren't really the social workers or the health workers, mental health workers available anymore to do that, so they quite often are getting towed into doing that sort of thing as well. The fire brigade have been incredibly busy. You'll probably remember, although it seems a bit unbelievable now because it's getting a bit colder, but back in July it was boiling, it was 40 degrees. They dealt with, on one day alone, and the place where they answer all the phone calls is actually in Merton. They were dealing with literally thousands of people ringing up saying there's fires, there's grass fires. There was a big situation that developed in the park of Malden Hall, and it was those barbecues, those temporary barbecues. They kept really, really hot, and once they put out the fire, they found 5 of them. They found 5 barbecues. So I think they dealt with something like 4,000 fires during the course of July. It is astonishing. And that is, I can't even remember, it's like off the planet many more than they would normally deal with in a particular month. So the fire brigade have been very busy. TfL, Transport for London, there's been a bit of a war that's gone on between the government and London over the need for extra funding to support TfL, because a lot of people were told to work from home. Almost everybody was told to work from home, and so we don't get any extra money coming into TfL pretty much, apart from what comes out of people's fares, the fare box. So obviously if everyone was staying at home and wasn't paying their fare, TfL had no money. Now that was the same across the rest of the country, and the government was happy to give lots of money to private transport operators, other local authorities, everywhere else, but they had a row in London, and they've been giving London little settlements, in some cases lasting like 1 week or 2 weeks. I don't know how they think anyone could plan. We've agreed another settlement, but some of the things that they've put around the edges of agreeing the settlement, they waited until the night before the money runs out, and then they said, oh well, if you want the money tomorrow, you've just got to agree to, and then have said, you know, here's 10 things that you've got to do. So it's been going on like that for months. Now it might change, because I've Grant Shapps was never on my Christmas card list. He was the Secretary of State for Transport, and I did a little dance of joy when I heard that he wasn't going to be the Secretary of State for Transport, because I just think he's been absolutely dreadful. So the funding is now there, and hopefully will see us through. We think from April of next year, 2023, the finances of TfL on a day-to-day basis should be back where, in good running order again. There's still an argument that needs to be completed over the capital finance. So you might notice on some of the tube lines, the seats are looking a bit rough. The Baker Lewis particularly bad. They've also been looking at, I can't now read my own writing, they've also been looking at buses. They were looking at cutting buses, so there's been a big consultation that started in May and closed in August about whether or not bus routes should be cut, which was a bit strange because that coincided with a big consultation over whether or not ULEZ, the ultra-low emission zone, should be expanded to cover the whole of London. Both of those consultations are closed. They have not yet come up with a conclusion or analysed all of the results, although somebody from TfL last week decided to send some of the results to the Daily Telegraph or the Sunday Telegraph. So there's a bit of a row going on about whether or not the figures that came in for the ULEZ, the ultra-low emission zone, and responses, whether they were even people who lived in London. Apparently some of them weren't. So I think I'll leave it there. Some people may have some questions. Actually, I can answer your question about the difference between Wimbledon and here. We have the same situation across London, and the shops in Wimbledon got together in something that's called a BID, which is a business improvement district. They don't have one in Tooting because the shops there voted against it. They don't have one in, they didn't have one in Clapham Junction because they also voted against it, but they've now changed their minds. The shops themselves have to get together to bring that in, and the larger shops and the smaller shops pay different amounts of money to then employ someone who replaces the town centre managers, because of the 60% reduction in local authority finances coming in from the government. Most town centre managers were no longer affordable, so the shops in Mitcham would have to vote in favour of having one, a BID, a business improvement district. One in Wimbledon is called Love Wimbledon.
Thank you, Fiona. That's good answer.
Just got to say about the ULEZ and the congestion. I've just left my job because I can't afford it. It cost me, I was a window cleaner in London, and it cost me over £50 before I even started work. So ULEZ congestion, 2 hours parking, 50 quid before I even cleaned the window. And another thing about TfL, they sent me out a couple of fines on camera. Apparently I hadn't replied to their response and whatever else, and I took them to court. And it was a load of rubbish. I actually won the case, 2 cases, I won the case. So they're sending out these fines, you've been caught on CCTV, turning here and turning there. And it wasn't the case at all. So I actually sent an email to the mayor, no response. I actually won the cases. So, there's a lot of underhand stuff going on here, and that other stuff. And bearing in mind that all this electric stuff that seems to be the craze now was actually over 100 years ago. Did you know that? 100 years ago, we had electric cars and stuff. So,
Yeah, trams and trolley buses were.
100 years ago, this technology was about, but they've ignored it and just plundered the planet, and look at the state of it now.
We have also gone through a phase of having things pulled by horses, so sometimes the things that we did in the past. I mean, I would agree with you. I think if you get written to, and it's not just by TfL, if Merton Council writes to you, if Wandsworth Council writes to you, if Lambeth Council writes to you, and they say, oh, we saw you doing something.
No, I'd bailiffs on the door.
Always check if they've sent you photographs, because they do sometimes get it wrong.
Now what I'm saying is, I had bailiffs round, and he was actually a really nice guy. He said, I'll tell you what, do yourself a favour, go down the post office and get yourself an out of time form, which I did, got a solicitor to sign it for 20 quid, sent it off,
they do sometimes get it wrong.
So he done me a favour because he was savvy and he was like a genuine person.
Sometimes it is wrong, and also the other thing that sometimes happens is, and there's a bit of a plague of this actually, and obviously I spent quite some time talking to the police, is people using your number plates on different vehicles. So sometimes it's worth looking at it, because it might be that someone is using cloned number plates and is pretending to be driving your car. I mean, they might put them on a completely different vehicle. So, if you get sent something, always look at it in
You
detail.
can always put hairspray on the number plate, stops the camera, then it reflects back. There you go, one for
Mine, you haven't mentioned what I'm going to ask. Recently, because of strikes, the tube, and this was this weekend gone, was overfull with people. It was suffocating. And it has been discussed in the past about ventilation on the tubes. And I'm just wondering if there is any money to actually do this, because I'm surprised people weren't fainting everywhere. It was overfull, but it was hot, and we were underground. So will there be some money at some point from the mayor?
Well, that was the one thing I did say, was that although they've agreed the money for Transport for London on a day-to-day basis, they haven't agreed the capital funding and improving ventilation in a big way on the tube. I mean, I thought they had gone out of their way to try and improve ventilation during the COVID period, and everybody who travels is always advised to travel with a bottle of water, so that if people do become hot, or if obviously if the trains get, which they do sometimes, get stuck in the tunnels, always make sure you're travelling with water. But I can't imagine that the government is suddenly going to completely do a U-turn and suddenly say you can have any amount of capital funding to spend on the tubes. I can't quite see that happening. Can you? I mean, I'd love to hear that was going to be the case.
They should have a health and safety inquiry, because the amount of people that get crammed into them tubes. Now the thing is, if you have a crash and that train, for instance, is going 50 miles an hour, you then go 50 miles an hour, and it's overcrowded like that. And they talk about their health and safety stuff, but they don't actually, like when it comes to them, they don't listen. Things like on the buses, on the trains, same thing. So we need more trains, but then it gets muddy, isn't it? What do you do?
Well, I think it'd be quite hard to get very many more trains onto most of the underground system. I mean, I missed a train at London Bridge when I was changing from the Jubilee to the Northern Line this evening. Looked at the sign and it said the next train was coming in 1 minute.
Yeah.
And quite often during the rush hour, the trains are that frequent. So it's hard to imagine that they could run more trains on some parts of the underground. That would be really quite difficult. And I actually don't think they achieve speeds of 50 miles an hour.
No, I'm talking about trains, not just tubes, trains. Trains do, yeah, it's the same thing, crowding people on there, and if it crashes, you then go at the speed the train's going.
I understand. I mean, obviously, we do run the London Overground as well, which has actually been a great success. Obviously, the other big success, which I haven't mentioned because it's sort of nowhere near here, I don't know if you've managed to get up to where the Elizabeth line is yet, but I would suggest going there because it is quite the most, it is quite an amazing system. I would, that was Crossrail 1. Crossrail 2 would come to Merton and Wandsworth, that would be coming north-south. Crossrail 1, the Elizabeth line goes east-west. But it is the most amazing system, and it glides along, and it does feel very nicely air conditioned as well. But they're very, very big tunnels. So that's probably TfL's biggest success in the last 5, 10, 15 years, something like that. I think they got the funding package through Parliament sometime between 2005 and 10. That's how long it takes to bring these things in. Yeah, long time.
Thank you, Yanni. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Yanni. Thank you. Our last speaker tonight is Amy, and we'll talk about climate action.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy Mallet. I'm the Climate Engagement Officer at Merton. I don't know if any of you have met my colleague Dominique Hill. She's the other officer. She couldn't be here this evening, so she sends her apologies. The long and short of it really is that the council has a climate strategy and action plan, as Councillor Christie said earlier. It sets an organisational target for the council to reduce our emissions to net zero by 2030, and then sets a borough-wide target to reduce emissions by 2050. I do realise the talk of emissions can send most people to sleep, and so there's good reason for trying to tie it into the cost of living theme this evening, because reducing emissions, working towards that, means that we're probably also working to reduce our energy demand, therefore our energy bills, reducing fuel poverty and trying to increase comfort as well. So it all ties together really, and you can see the climate strategy and action plan on the council's website. We also have a climate delivery plan which shows you the progress we're making towards our targets, and that's also on the website as well. So the main reason I wanted to talk to you this evening was to highlight some of the resident focus activity that's been going on in the borough and how you can actually get involved. Climate change can seem quite abstract, but we set up a resident-led climate action group in 2021. So I worked really closely with a very committed group of volunteers who set up carbon reduction projects. You might have heard of Merton Garden Streets. Any of you? Yeah. Another project called Energy Matters as well. So we went into William Morris, Lonesome and Singlegate and basically introduced an energy module to teach children about climate change, energy, see if they could take that advice home to their families. I realise also lots of families are already making as many cuts and savings as they can, but it's also important to try and inspire children to try and get them interested in sustainable green career choices, because it's a sector that's going to grow exponentially actually. So there's lots of things happening, and these were created by residents for residents. So I encourage all of you to get involved, and you can send me an email about that. We also have a climate action newsletter, so that's how we tell residents about events going on in the borough. So we're trying to focus much more on East Merton over the coming weeks and months. We did hold a cycle cinema at Karen's House and Grounds a couple of weeks ago. So get kids involved, got them pedalling to try and, make the screen move and create.
It was a great event.
Yeah, yeah, no, you were there, weren't you? So yeah, we had free doctor bike maintenance sessions as well for residents to try and get residents travelling on their bike. Cannon Summer Fair as well, hopefully some of you attended that. We had everything from solar powered scare electrics to kids to some of the more serious stuff around home energy efficiency savings. So trying to tick off all those boxes, trying to support families and trying to inspire children as well. We will have a climate action engagement strategy coming out in the next few months, so that will be around a lot more of an activity of how we engage with residents around climate change. We want to make it interesting, we want to make sure residents are brought along for the journey. There's a lot around climate justice which needs to be brought into conversations about how we reduce emissions across our buildings and energy, across our transport. So the more residents that we get involved in these conversations, the better. So that's part of the reason for coming and speaking to you this evening as well. And I think that's probably where I want to leave it. I would just encourage you to sign up to the Climate Action newsletter. It goes out monthly, and then get involved with the Climate Action group as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Good question. So any further questions? Oh, perfect.
You mentioned climate change. I know it includes total pollution.
Pollution.
Yes. Are there any more plans by the government, by the council to increase pollution?
To decrease pollution. So
Well, they've done it with closing roads off. They've done it by reducing the speed to 20 miles an hour. And the dreaded, I'm calling it speed bumps, but where we are. And people, buses are the same. I go down to Mitcham, it's an awful journey with all the bumps.
I probably can't speak for my colleagues in highways, transport and air quality. They'd be the ones that focus most on that. We do have 65 school streets now in the borough, so that's to try and reduce air pollution around schools, particularly important for the development of children and their lungs essentially. Other things that we're doing around transport, I couldn't tell you too much detail, but I'm happy to take the question away to colleagues.
Well, Common Side East, the road closed off. So everywhere they go in the same road. And in Russia it's a pilot. And you don't like this, but cars have exhaust. And it's more exhaust going.
I think that depends on, the question is so broad in the sense of, what else is the council doing or what the government doing to tackle climate change? On that particular thing like cars, that's generally a national government issue because of the supply side and the incentives they provide us to get a new car which is less polluting, and also for those who produce cars to produce better cars basically. So, in terms of specifics, what I know the council's doing, Billy talked about the support for you know, local areas for greening, for the environment, for removal of trees. So there's a wide aspect there. So you've got the natural side, but then you also got the supply side, and that's the point you mentioned before about cars and pollution. But you know, let's bring that. Let's make sure we have a more detailed point on that.
Prefer midnight. What? 20 mile an hour? Come on, the roads are clear.
Well, it depends on the area as well. I mean, ultimately 20 mile an hour is about road safety as well as reducing pollution.
We can take that 15 mile an hour.
But the issue with pollution is about fuel usage. So if you go over 2,000 RPM, then you're using more fuel. So it's about efficient driving. So it's a bit more. And again, there are some roads in the borough where we've looked at and we've revised what the speed limit is. And these things are all about evolution and iteration. Sometimes it's right first time, sometimes it isn't, and these things evolve. And if you've got a particular road that you think shouldn't be 20, then if you're in my patch, come and talk to me. If you're in someone else's patch, have a chat with them and let's put it through the test and use data and how we do this most properly.
I think just to jump in quickly there as well, the transition to electric vehicles will help reduce pollution. I realise that electric vehicles are at the minute relatively unaffordable, and the price has been and will continue to come down. But the investment that the council will put into through the government grant that we received will, I think, how many charge points? Between 200 and 300 charge points it will get in to help support that.
That's a good point. I mention this because I'm chair of planning too. We have developments coming through where planning committees insisting that new builds, new homes have chargers within those automatically. So ultimately it's about the wider ecosystem as well, it's not just the public realms.
I think we've got to realise that we are actually carbon based, right? And number two is nobody's actually died from that unless you put your mouth over exhaust, right? Well, planting more trees would help. Building high-rise blocks actually reduces air quality. And just finally, with the electric vehicles, any electric equipment increases radiation, and this is and cancer, right? And this is part of the war in Ukraine because they've got a lithium. Lithium is the batteries, right? If they run off, and after 5 or 6 years, then batteries become no good. Throw them away again. It creates more problems. We're jumping out the frying pan into the fire, as usual. There's hydrogen engines, the most abundant substance in the universe, hydrogen. This is where we should be at now, not where we're going now.
Well, actually, hydrogen, I mean, you raised the subject I wrote my undergraduate thesis on. So I've been talking about hydrogen as well.
Yes, let's go, have a conversation.
But I mean, basically, but I mean, I'm going to your point before. I mean, frankly, I think it's disingenuous to say that people haven't died because of pollution.
No. I said unless you put your mouth over it, we are carbon based.
People have died. You know, there's asthmatics who've died because of the atmosphere.
No, that's actually added to the actual medicine they've got, because actually anything you bring from outside, you've got to put inside. It's very good. You get to a point, it creates a
I think let's part of that, but I appreciate your point. Thank you very much, Amy. Thank you everyone. Big thank you to Amy, to Billy, to Leonie, and all to yourselves. So this closes down the more formal part. We have some great organisations who are here to support you. So I'll ask Chris to turn off the camera, and if I can ask some of them to come up and just introduce who they are, what they're doing, and what they're here, and what they can offer. That would be fantastic. So I think we'll start. Can we start with you, Mike?
Yeah, of course.